to my channel and welcome to today's video. If you are new here, hi, my name is Amara. I am a yoga teacher and I'm also really passionate about holistic women's health and wellness and well-being. And with that in mind, that is kind of why I wanted to create this video for today. So I thought in today's video we could spend some time in my very rustic cottage kitchen and I could share with you some of my favourite remedies, things I'm concocting in the kitchen for women's wellness throughout winter. One is, I guess, more like just general energetics, and then the other two are very much women's wellness focused. And I thought it could be really nice to spend a bit of an afternoon here in the kitchen, hang out with you guys, share some of my favorite remedies, because this is one of my favorite things to chat about. So with that being said, I'm so happy you're here. If this sounds like your cup of tea, quite literally, or something you would enjoy, feel free to subscribe if you aren't already, like below, stay to hang out. But with that being said, welcome to my very rustic cottage kitchen. I really wanted to film this at this sort of time because for those of you who might be new here or don't know, we recently moved into this cottage, and to be honest, the kitchen was one of the things that we thought we would immediately need to change, and I'm so glad that we didn't because we're really enjoying the time getting to know it. It's very sort of quirky and, as I say, very, very rustic. But over the next few months we will be making some really small decorative changes, maybe some new tiles and things like that. So I thought it'd be really nice to also just document it at this stage so that it's never forgotten. It's also been a really beautiful lesson of, again, finding the beauty in just things that aren't quite perfect. It's very much like a frazzled English woman country cottage kitchen, and I actually love it. Even though there are little things that will change, I've found so much love for how rustic it is. Here you can sort of see half in shot is our almost 20-year-old range cooker that literally works like a absolute gem and keeps us so warm, and I love her. And we're just actually really learning the lesson, already embracing and living the lesson of just perfectly imperfect in its own special way. But with that being said, let's begin making some really cozy but also nourishing remedies for winter, and I'm going to get started on the first one right now because my fiance has just come in and asked for this sort of tonic concoction that is so simple. So let's get started. This is one of those winter remedies that is so simple, it almost feels silly to share, but I sometimes think it's just the inspiration and the ideas. So for this one, it is fresh lemon, organic fresh ginger ideally, but any ginger will do. I like to just squeeze a little bit into each of my mugs to begin with, and then some fresh slices of lemon, some fresh ginger, and my number one trick is to always make sure I'm using local honey, because the immunity that comes from local honey really helps in the immunity you need for the area that you're in. And this is really one of those remedies where you're getting the vitamin C from the lemons, which is so important throughout winter. The ginger is really spicy and warming, and the honey is just such a lovely way to kind of take the edge off of the lemon and the ginger mixing together. And as I say, I love this in the morning. It feels really refreshing, but it's also so lovely in the evening as it's fantastic for digestion and just leaves you feeling so fresh and light on those dark, cold winter days. Now that is most definitely a better way to get started on this video. Honestly, I have been making these lemon and ginger, I call it a tonic. I used to actually make it into a tonic, but actually sometimes I think simple is better. Just fresh lemon, fresh ginger, and then my kind of go-to is to always make sure I'm using local honey, because that means that you have immunity for your local area and you've got sort of that little boost of the honey being so unbelievably sweet and lovely, but also is a really great immunity boost, as well as with the ginger as well. That's fantastic for immunity. And then we all know during winter we need a little bit of that vitamin D, which is what I love from the lemons, which Again, I love this in the morning, I love this in the evening. I've just delivered one into my fiance who wanted one mid-afternoon. I swear by these, and it is so simple. And again, you can also just think, whenever I'm making anything, I always think of the intention behind it. And what's really lovely, which we're kind of going to go into with this next remedy, is that everything carries a meaning and an energy. So lemons carry an energy of like freshness and like revitalization. Ginger is very cleansing but also warming. Honey is really good for like abundance, as well as just being a natural sweetener, but also being really good for immunity. So you're hitting all the things, body and soul, which I really, really love. I need another sip. And then we're going into my classic, which is my winter simmer pot. Let's make a winter, January, midwinter, I guess, simmer pot. Now, I am going to be using, you're going to have to forgive me, kind of a Christmassy pot, but this is my mulling pot that I use in winter, and I actually bought her for mulled wine. But with that being said, a recipe I made over sort of like the festive period was a mulled like apple juice. I'd call it an apple cider, but I know that's a little bit American, but we made like a mulled apple juice, and that went down so well as kind of a non-alcoholic, lovely, really warming like afternoon warmer. But we're not making that today. I can share the recipe for that though if you would like it, so do let me know. But what we are doing today is we are making a good old witchy winter simmer pot. Now, I feel like whenever I make simmer pots, you guys love them. The internet loves a simmer pot. But even more than that, I feel like it's so important to kind of know why we make simmer pots and why I love making them as much as I do. Now, simmer pots are such a fantastic way for cleansing the energy for your home. So this is more of a remedy for your home, your space. It's really for one of those days where you're just feeling a little bit heavy and stuck at home, and you feel like you need to really like refresh and cleanse the energy of the space around you. I feel like we need this more actually in winter as well, because windows aren't being left open, we aren't always in and out, and I think we just really appreciate having a really like energetically neutral or fresh, cozy, warming space within the winter months, especially midwinter. And when I talk about midwinter, I really mean especially here in England, we are quite literally in the middle of the countryside as well. It is like cold and dark and wet. It's a very sort of grey and wet afternoon today, so we really appreciate having home feel a little bit more fresh within these short days of midwinter. Now, with that being said, let me show you what I am putting in my midwinter simmer. Okay, so the first thing that is going into my midwinter simmer pot is, as always, a big jar of moon water. Now, I tend to make moon water under either a full or a new moon, never an eclipse. We don't want that energy. If you can hear that our cooker has just turned on, it's warming up so that we can make this simmer pot. And she is very old, as I said, so she's very, very noisy. We've got to forgive her. The central heating is also turned on, and she powers that too. So she's a real workhorse of the house here. But as I said, moon water, you fill a jar, bottle, cup, whatever it might be, with a fresh filtered water if possible, and put it under a full or new moon. You can do this either in the garden, you can put it outside, or you can put it in a windowsill if you live in an apartment or a flat. That's what I used to do when I lived in a flat. And you pop it there under either a new or full moon, and it charges up and really infuses the energy of that moon into the water. And there are actually so many scientific studies, as woo-woo and witchy as this is, there are so many scientific studies that show that water does actually carry a memory, and it can also like hold emotions, and it can hold feelings, it can also carry energy. So it really does embody the energy of the moon. So if you're doing this multiple times, you probably want to label which moon you collected this under, so you can use that. This was collected under the Cancer full moon, so this is going to be perfect for a really comforting midwinter simmer pot. And I think it'll be after I post this. We'll have the Capricorn new moon, and also a really good time to do so. Sometimes I make simmer pots for manifesting, sometimes I make simmer pots for like with certain intentions today. It's just a bit of an uplifting one that I want to really just bring in some fresh. What's really fun about Simmer Pot is not only do they create non-toxic fragrance within your home if that's something that's really important to you, but you can also choose your ingredients with intention, and each of these ingredients have then different qualities that they can bring into and then like infuse into your space. So lemon is very refreshing and rejuvenating, orange is amazing for energizing and positive energy, cinnamon is in there for abundance and warmth, which I really love. The bay leaf is in there for protection of the energy as well, which is one of my favorites to pop in. And then I have a mixture of cranberries and star anise and cloves, and these are very in tune with the season of winter, and that's why I really wanted to add them in there too. Now, whilst that simmer pot is on the stove, I have decided to come out into the garden and finish my lemon ginger and honey tea as the sun is setting. I feel like winter is one of those times where it's really hard to stay in your routines, find a bit of a grounding in a sense. So taking time, even if it is just for a few minutes, to come outside is, again, one of my favorite rituals for winter. I think it's so important that we're outside every day. I know that sounds silly, but I think sometimes we forget how important that can be. And I don't know about you, but I immediately feel so much better having been outside and having this warm, lovely tea, watching the sunset and the odd tractor go past and be very noisy. There's something really special about it that I think we find in summer, but less so in the winter time. So your little reminder, if you aren't spending enough time outside in the winter, get out there, spend some more time. Another sip of tea is needed. In saying all of that though, it does feel like January has been about a year long. I feel like I should caveat this by saying it's currently 4 p.m. and it's still light, so the light is coming back in and the days are getting longer, and sometimes I feel like we don't take the time to appreciate that, me included. I feel like being out here is really forcing me to take the time to appreciate that the days are in fact getting longer. I think this will be my final upload of January as well before we move into February, which I'm really grateful about. But it's weird, I feel like January has been a time that has been very grounding and great in so many ways. I've read a lot of good books. I would love your book recommendations. Any fantasy or romance readers would love some recommendations there, because I know that we used to chat about books on here all the time actually. So yeah, any good books you love. Also, obviously, I'm usually really good at sharing some of my favorite more spiritual books, so I can share some of those too maybe in next week's video. But I think more than that, obviously, January has been a really lovely time just to sort of like breathe and integrate and settle, despite obviously everything that is also going on in the world, which we don't talk about on here really that much, but I'm very aware of it. Trust me, things aren't being posted in spite of that. But I really hope this is a space that feels like a little breath of fresh air, if nothing else. But with that being said, the birds are so chatty. I don't know if you can hear them, but they are just so chatty. But with that being said, I am going to finish my tea and then I'm going to go in and I might do a little bit of yoga, and then I need to check on my simmer pot. I might even light myself a fire because it is a little chilly out here, because my final remedy is most definitely like what I'd say is like my women's wellness, winter women's wellness bedtime remedy. So it's definitely a cozy one. It is a few days later, but I'm coming back because I have one more warming sort of winter remedy that I wanted to share with you, and this is one that I just love, especially when I'm on my cycle for that week in the month, because I tried to avoid caffeine that week. And this is a golden milk latte, which I know has so many roots in Ayurveda as well, but I love this, and it's one of my favorite things to make. So here in front of me, I'm hoping I can show you this without spilling it all. Let's see if, there we go. I have got some cinnamon, I've got some ginger, some turmeric, I've got 2 cardamom pods, and this is nutmeg that I'm going to grate in. And what I'm going to do, you can absolutely do this on the stove, but I'm actually going to pop this in my like milk frother hot chocolate maker and pop in a little bit of coconut milk. You can do this with any milk, it doesn't matter what kind, and also a fair bit of honey. They usually say you should add a little bit of black pepper as well to make sure that the turmeric activates. I actually don't know what that means, but I will do it nevertheless. So let's make a really lovely, nourishing golden milk. Just golden milk. It's not even going to be a latte, it's just a golden milk. Perfect little drink to end the evening.
This recipe is so simple. It is literally just a case of combining everything and warming the milk. One thing I will say is if you choose to use a non-dairy milk, I always try to use one with as little added things as possible. So I try to check and make sure I'm not using ones with added oils and things like that. But once I've mixed them all together, I'm using a milk frother, as I said, but you can heat them on the stove with a whisk and it does the exact same thing and just creates the most warming, spicy, comforting, but also really beautifully nourishing winter remedy.
This is like the warmest, like nourishing, loveliest nightcap. With that being said, if you're not one for spice, lighten up on the ginger and the cinnamon, but it is really just so lovely. Mine always tend to be a little bit darker because I do just love cinnamon and I tend to really add lots in there. But I think that's going to be everything for today's video. I am currently sipping on this before we make some dinner. I have pulled out a book from the bookshelf which I have actually been like on and off reading for a little while now. It is called Descent and Rising by Carly Mountain, and I am loving this book. I feel like that's something that I just really enjoy. Reading is just about women's experiences through life, and as I say, so much of the work that I do is working with women, and that's what I'm really passionate about. So thinking about sort of the experiences of life and the way we move through life is always like a niche interest of mine. And when it comes to like women's healing and things like that, it's, as I say, a bit of a niche interest. And I have another book that I've been meaning to start, honestly, for ages. It's been on my bookshelf for quite a few months, but I really just feel like sometimes I want to be in the right space to start certain books. It is called The Great Cosmic Mother, which I'm dying to begin. I also want to reread The Woman Who Runs with Wolves. That is the title. I just don't know if I've missed, like, if it's The Woman or Women Who Runs with Wolves, whatever it might be. But I actually really want to reread that because I have read it before, but I just feel like sometimes you reread it and you take so much more in, and I feel like I'm at a stage in my life where I actually might be more ready to receive it than I was the first time I read it. So that's a little tip there. If you are doing any sort of heavy reading and maybe the first time it doesn't 100% resonate, I would really recommend giving it a reread a few years down the line when it feels right. But with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed hanging out with me in this video. I hope you enjoyed spending some time in the kitchen and my sort of women's wellness remedies that I really love and enjoy. I know they were really simple, but I hope that maybe it's inspired you to get in the kitchen a little bit more and really think about your wellness and your spiritual routines, not just on the mat, within your yoga practice or meditation practice, whatever it might be, but also allow it to be a real, like, taking yourself through life. And I truly do believe everything we do can be intentional and spiritual, and also can be a form of nourishment. So I really hope that this video inspired that for you. If it did, please do let me know. Pop a comment below. If you haven't liked and you aren't subscribed, I would love for you to stay, so please do. But otherwise, I'm sending you so much love, and I will see you in my next video here on my channel. Bye guys.